You've never been introduced to anyone. No name, no rank, no record. Today you walk into a room where a man has been sitting in silence for 72 hours. There's one chair, one overhead light, no windows, no clock. The air is cold, not uncomfortably cold, just cold enough that your body never fully relaxes. You're not a soldier. You're not a criminal. You hold a postgraduate degree in behavioral psychology. You passed every background check ever designed. You have a file somewhere in a building you've never visited, and that file says you are exactly what this program needs. The man across from you doesn't know your name. That's the point. The most dangerous thing in this room isn't him. It's what you're about to become. Level 1. The recruitment. You're sitting in a federal building with no signage on the door. The hallway looked like an insurance office. Beige carpet, fluorescent lights, a man in a gray suit who never showed you a badge. He slides a folder across the table. He doesn't open it. He tells you your country is facing a threat unlike anything in its history. He tells you the people working on that threat need a specific kind of mind. Analytical, detached, capable of reading human behavior under extreme conditions. He tells you yours qualifies. The folder contains a clearance form, not a job description, a clearance form. You ask what the role involves. He says, protection. You ask who you'd be protecting. He says, everyone. That answer should tell you nothing. But it feels like everything. After 2001, the CIA and Department of Defense went looking for psychologists, behavioral scientists, and military instructors who understood the architecture of the human mind under pressure. The 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report later confirmed that contractors with psychological backgrounds became central architects of what came next. Most of them, like you, started with a folder and a vague answer. You sign the clearance form. You say yes. You don't ask what the job actually is. Level 2. The training program. The facility is in a state you won't name, in a building that has no external markings and accepts no mail. The program is called SIRE, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. It was originally built to teach American soldiers how to endure enemy interrogation, how to resist psychological pressure, how to survive capture, how to keep their minds intact when everything around them was designed to break them apart. Someone realized the training worked both ways. If you know exactly what breaks a person, you know exactly how to break them. Your instructors don't call it breaking. They call it learned helplessness induction. They cite academic psychology. They reference peer-reviewed research on the thresholds of human endurance, sleep architecture, sensory deprivation response curves. The precise number of hours, studies suggest somewhere between 96 and 120 before the prefrontal cortex begins to degrade and judgment starts to collapse. You take notes. This is the part that works on you too. The clinical framing. When the language is scientific, the activity feels scientific. When the framework is medical, the application feels medical. You're not learning how to harm people. You're learning human psychology at its most fundamental level. That's what you tell yourself. By week 3, you stop thinking of it as pressure. You call it a methodology. Level 3. First deployment. The black site. You fly for 11 hours. You don't know exactly where you land. The paperwork you signed covers that. What you know, you are now inside what the program calls a detention site. The CIA operated these facilities across multiple countries: Thailand, Poland, Romania, Lithuania. The Senate report later confirmed their existence. The European Court of Human Rights ruled on what happened inside them. At the time you arrive, none of that has been written yet. The facility looks like a private medical clinic. Clean floors, controlled temperature, functional lighting. People moving through corridors with clipboards. You are handed a code name, not the detainee. You. Your name is no longer your name inside this facility. Your history, your credentials, your previous employment, none of it travels here. You are an asset with a designation. The operational logic is clean. If your name doesn't exist here, neither do your actions. You study the facility. You study your first subject. You read his file, a file that calls him by a code name too, and you begin to build a psychological map of everything he is and everything he's afraid of. The facility doesn't look like what you feared, and that is the most unsettling thing about it. When something looks like a hospital, your brain wants to believe it functions like one. Level 4. The first session. Your first session involves no physical contact. That's important to understand. The first tool is the environment. You control the temperature in his room, kept at a level that guarantees discomfort without medical consequence. You control the light cycle, no natural rhythm, no day, no night, just fluorescent consistency that slowly untethers the body from time. You control the sound. You control when he eats and how much. He has not slept in 4 days. You haven't touched him. The approved techniques, documented in legal memos produced by the Office of Legal Counsel, reviewed by senior government attorneys, authorized at levels far above yours, include sleep deprivation up to 180 hours, dietary manipulation, stress positions, environmental control. The memos exist. They were written by lawyers. They use words like enhanced and interrogation and authorized. The 2014 Senate report later reproduced portions of them. After your first session, you file a report. The report uses the approved language, enhanced technique, environmental manipulation, subject compliance level, low, recommended continuation. You go back to your quarters. You sleep fine. You tell yourself that's a sign of professionalism, that detachment is a skill, that you have to be clinical to be effective. You file your report. You use the approved language. You sleep fine. Level 5, escalation authorized. A cable arrives from above your clearance level. You don't know exactly who sent it. You know it passed through senior counsel. You know it has been reviewed and approved at a level that makes your own authorization look like a footnote. The cable informs you that 2 additional techniques have been cleared for operational use. You didn't request them, but the decision has already been made. This is the part that the Senate report documents carefully. The approval chains, the cables, the paper trail that moved authorization upward and moral responsibility with it. Individual operators were told the legal framework had been secured. Lawyers had signed off. The authority structure above them had made the call. There is a concept in psychology, Stanley Milgram documented it in the 1960s, in a series of experiments that are still taught in every undergraduate psychology program. When an authority figure takes responsibility for an outcome, ordinary people will do things they would never choose independently. The authority structure doesn't just permit the action, it psychologically relocates the action. It's no longer yours. You read the cable. You think about your training, your clearances, the folder you signed in a beige hallway years ago. You think about the word legal. The memo says legal. Your gut says something else. You follow the memo. Level 6, the psychology of the subject. You are no longer reading him. You are engineering him. You understand his psychological architecture better than anyone alive, better than his family, better than anyone who has ever known him, because you have studied him in conditions that strip away every social performance a person normally maintains. You know what he avoids thinking about. You know which topics slow his breathing and which ones stop it. You know the exact psychological sequence that collapses his resistance. The academic framework you're working from was built by a researcher named Martin Seligman, a prominent American psychologist who developed the concept of learned helplessness in the late 1960s. The theory described what happens when a subject repeatedly experiences an outcome they cannot control. Eventually, they stop trying to resist. They cease attempting escape. The helplessness becomes a psychological state rather than a circumstantial one. Seligman built that research to understand depression, to help people. You are using it differently. There is something that happens at this level that the training didn't warn you about. There is a satisfaction in precision. When you are very good at something, when you have studied it, practiced it, refined your technique, competence generates its own reward signal regardless of what the competence is applied to. You are good at this. You are measurably, demonstrably, excellently good at this. You don't write that in your reports. You never say it aloud, but it's there. Somewhere between level 3 and level 6, the subject stopped being a person. You didn't notice when that happened. Level 7, the moment of doubt. It's 3 a.m. and you're sitting on a concrete step outside the facility. You're not here for a reason. You stepped outside because the corridor started to feel like the rooms inside it. You needed a different wall to look at. It's been 4 months since you had a conversation that wasn't operational. Everyone here communicates in procedure, in cable language, in deniable phrasing, sentences constructed so that nothing in them can later be attributed to a human decision made by a human being. You have forgotten what it sounds like when someone says something they didn't pre-clear with legal, when someone expresses something that didn't come from a memo. Multiple people who worked inside these programs later described, some anonymously, some on record, a specific kind of psychological damage. Not the variety that comes from witnessing violence. A different kind, The kind that comes from participating in something that violates the moral code you held before you entered the room. Researchers who study military and intelligence personnel call it moral injury. It is distinct from trauma. It is chronic. It rarely responds to standard treatment. It is almost never acknowledged by the institutions that generate it. You put in a request for reassignment. You frame it professionally. Operational fatigue. A need for rotation. You use the right language. The request is declined. You go back inside. Level 8. The program ends. You don't. One day there's no cable, no new authorization, no session scheduled. A man in a suit, different building, different city, hands you a document that says your current operational assignment has concluded. Your clearance level is being adjusted. You'll be transitioned to an analytical role. Executive Order 13491 was signed in January 2009. It formally ended the CIA's rendition, detention, and interrogation program. No ceremony, no formal acknowledgement of personnel. The contractors who designed the core methodology, 2 psychologists who had built the framework from SEER training, had been paid approximately $81 million by the time the program concluded. No charges were filed against anyone involved in operating it. The program simply stopped. You are moved to a building with windows. There is a desk, a computer, a coffee machine in a common area where people talk about things that aren't classified. Nobody debriefs you on what you experienced. Nobody offers a transition framework. Nobody asks how you are in a way that means they actually want to know. The institution that gave you the code name, secured the legal cover, authorized the cables, and transferred moral responsibility upward through a chain of command that insulated everyone above you. That institution has now quietly moved on. It didn't ask you to. You just have to. The program ends. The program never happened. And you are the only proof that it did. Somewhere right now there is a room with no windows and no clock. The light is on. The air is cold. There is one chair. Someone qualified is about to walk in. Cleared to a level that took 18 months to process. Educated, patriotic, completely certain they understand what they've signed up for. They've read the training materials. They believe in the mission. They think the most dangerous thing in that room is the man already sitting in it. They'll carry a clipboard. They'll file reports in approved language. They'll sleep fine, for a while. They don't know yet what Level 9 feels like. You do.